Hello, everybody. That's my talk about CloudFlare and why we love it. About me, short summary, my name is Sven Härtwig. I'm the CEO of narf-studios, and we are a digital agency with a strong technical focus and based in Hamburg and specialized in e-commerce projects with Magento. Our customer, we have apfelkiste.ch for about 6 years now. And apfelkiste is pretty big. You might know them. Currently, more than 25,000 unique products every time on stock, and up to over 9 million page views a month. And they are always fast growing. They have always been fast growing, and they will always fast growing in the future. And with apfelkiste, we are on the CloudFlare setup for 5 years now. Problems we had in the past. Before apfelkiste went to CloudFlare, they have been at a hosting company in Berlin, which was not really satisfying. They had several problems with their varnish and all that stuff, and it was not the best solution for apfelkiste. So the problems we had, get out of the line of potential attacks, DDoS and other known attacks, known exploits and so on. Of course, we wanted more speed because we always want more speed. And we had to optimize processes. Like the best process we had is image processing. Magento itself creates an image for every single view. So card is a single image, product view is a single image, and this process has had to be optimized. And of course, the goal was to reduce the workload of the web servers, so web servers could do other things they have to do, and let CloudFlare do other things which CloudFlare can handle better than we can. So the first thing we did is move our setup to CloudFlare, and this is a really cool feature of CloudFlare, that you can proxy your DNS. So that means that your IP address of your origin server is not visible to the internet itself. CloudFlare will only show their IP address, and your IP address is hidden. But a short notice: if you are moving behind CloudFlare, do this with a new IP address, because it can be that an attacker may also know your IP already. So it doesn't work that you put your servers behind Cloudflare and think, okay, now I'm safe because I'm behind Cloudflare. Because when an attacker knows your IP address, he can put all his attacks onto your IP address directly. So this is a pretty important notice, that when you are moving to CloudFlare, please use a new IP address for your servers. So when you are behind CloudFlare and an attacker puts attacks onto your website, CloudFlare manages that for you. Another thing is CloudFlare can manage known exploits and the most common known threats. So the web application firewall of CloudFlare does a really good job, and we had no problems so far. But of course, it's not 100% secure. You always have to secure your application by yourself. CloudFlare has something like rate limiting. That means that you can put a filter in front of your forms, for example, and you can configure a limit that users may only put maybe 10 requests in 1 minute on this form. Otherwise, they are blocked. And you can also add fire rules by yourself. So this is also your firewall itself. This is a display of the CloudFlare backend, and you can see this. These are the managed rules. So the managed rules is a rule set CloudFlare provides by themselves, and it is made for your application. And so the most used applications like Magento, WordPress, PHP itself. And these can be turned on with only one click. And I think that's a really good thing. So coming to speed, at first the old setup it was pretty slow because we had a not really good configured Varnish as a caching layer. The old hosting provider had some problems to configure it, and the result was that we always had caching issues, that a page was not cached at all, or the TTL was too low, about 2 minutes, so the pages were not cached, and this was not the best time we had. Another point was that there was no CDN at all, so the images were delivered by another subdomain. Was also not the best solution. We then put a CDN provider, an external CDN provider, onto that to deliver our assets, but the latency was worse than without a CDN, and we also had no optimizations. The web servers had to do all the stuff by himself, like image processing. So what does slow mean to an e-commerce business? You all know that. If you are a user and the website, the online shop you're visiting is slow, you're annoyed. And the worst thing which can happen is that the customer leaves. So we have an impatient user here and a very impatient user here, and this one is already gone because your web server is only too slow. And another thing is that search engines, they don't like slow websites. Yeah, they only want the best for the users. Why does this matter? Because users hate a slow website, and if they are gone, you're losing money. Search engines are also creating a score of your website, which is based on the speed of your website, and this means, yeah, you are getting less traffic because your rating is lower at the search engines. That means you are losing money too. And what I can assure you that each improvement in speed performance matters and enables you to earn more money. Because thinking of Germany, when you're in a train and try to access a website on your mobile phone, this can be pretty slow. And if your page has been optimized for speed and performance, a user might be able to access your website even if he is on a train. And that means you're earning money because visitors can visit your website and can buy products from you. With CloudFlare France, 5 years ago we went to 9, and we moved the setup to CloudFlare, and that was a really good decision because we had a fully working full page cache with a CDN, and it was really easy to handle because all we had to do is we put the DNS in front of our web servers and only configured some page rules. Of course, we had to create a module which can purge caches in CloudFlare and maintain the connection between CloudFlare and the shop. But that was a task of 1 or 2 days, and then it was done. Another thing is you don't need any configuration like VCL configuration for varnish caches. Like I said before, the old hosting provider was not able to give us a configuration, and he was days on this configuration to make it work, and it never worked really well. And this, in fact, means that for us, CloudFlare is really easy. You don't have to put any configuration to it. You don't have to learn another configuration language also. You just have to add these page rules. And these page rules are pretty simple to create. I can show you that. I can show you that later in another slide, how easy they are to maintain. So with CloudFlare in the front, that's the image from the slide before. With CloudFlare in the front, your origin server may enjoy his life because all the traffic which was on the origin server is now cached by the CloudFlare CN, and all traffic which is coming to your website is delivered by CloudFlare. And this leads to happy and satisfied customers because they can access your website very fast. And it also leads to a search engine which is happy with your with the speed of your website, and of course will put up your rankings because Lighthouse speeds, Lighthouse scoring is better than before, and this means that your the quality of the website will increase. So CloudFlare helped us so far with a very low latency for DNS lookups and response time for the content, and that is really, I have never seen better performance before at a CM provider. And the Edge cache of CloudFlare helped us a lot because, as I said, it's easy to maintain, and it works like out of the box. Yeah, you are putting CloudFlare in front of it, and whoops de whoops, you have your fully working cache. Speed optimization tools CloudFlare offers are, for example, auto minify. You can minify your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which is coming uncompressed from your origin server, and CloudFlare can minify and compress these assets. Actually, we are only using this for CSS. HTML is done by the server, and JavaScript, I personally are, in my opinion, JavaScript minifying leads sometimes to problems, and you want to avoid these problems, because I experienced that once that minified JavaScript code put some errors to life, which was not that funny. Because of that, I'm a bit careful about JavaScript compressing by other services. We are doing the compression, so the building of our JavaScript libraries by ourselves in the build process, so we don't need this in our setup. Another thing is polish, which can also be activated with one click. What polish does, it reduces the file size of your images. So it removes non-used data like meta tags or other metadata from the images, and it also you can configure these values. It also creates a compression on it, so you can leave CloudFlare with polish alone, and it will compress and optimize your images, which are then delivered to the customers. Then there's broadly you can activate for CloudFlare. That's you all know GZIP, I think, and broadly is another algorithm. HTTP2 prioritization is offered by CloudFlare, and a TCP turbo. That's optimizations done by CloudFlare. You have the rocket loader, and now I have to think about it that I don't tell you the wrong thing. With Raygun, you can change already cache data in CloudFlare by your origin server. So you only send data which has changed to the CloudFlare cache object, and only this is will be changed. To be honest, we don't use this yet, and I can't guarantee you that it works by 100%. So Mirage is still in beta. That's because of that we don't use this yet. But Mirage has really good power. It shows it looks for the user's device, so it makes a difference between a desktop device and a mobile device. A desktop device and a mobile device, they each have to get some. They have to get different image dimensions and quality. And Mirage does all this by themselves. So it looks for the device, for the dimensions, and creates a resized image for that user. And another cool thing we are using is AMP Real URL, but unfortunately that is only working for Chrome Android right now. With that functionality, you can have these AMP pages, the accelerated mobile pages, on your domain itself, because normally a AMP website looks like google.com/amp/blah blah blah, and with this functionality you can put your URL in front of it. So page rules. Generally, every asset and root, only GET request, can be stored in the edge cache configured by a page rule. It is also possible to cache post requests by a worker, but that's another story. To purge these URLs, this is really easy. You only have to go to the dashboard of CloudFlare or use the API. So possible ways to purge a CloudFlare cache object. So the background is that each URL with a query string behind it creates another cache object in CloudFlare. So for example, this is a cache object. We will look at this on another slide later. This is one cache object, and if I have a get parameter behind it, like UTM source, like if I'm getting this URL from from a Google campaign, this will be another cache object. So, and to purge these cache objects in CloudFlare, you can do this by the URL, by the host name, by tags, which is pretty cool, or by prefix, or of course you can purge it all. I don't know if others had the problem by themselves, but with the varnish configuration, we were not able to purge only the home page. So in this case, it would be this URL. This was pretty annoying, and we were happy then when we were at CloudFlare that we could do this. So this shows a simple page rule in CloudFlare. And these things are really easy to maintain because you just add a new rule and put here your root into it, and then you are setting all these settings. Most important for this rule is the cache level and the edge cache TTLs. So this means this rule itself means that every root which is like this pattern will be cached for 7 days until it is being purged by a request. Page rules itself are mostly used to create caches, so that we can say, hey, with this pattern or this route, please cache this for maybe 2 days or 3 days or so. But we also use page rules to specify caching of other objects, because maybe our media folder, images may have a longer time to live than HTML or even JavaScript files, because JavaScript files may change the next day. An image of a product, maybe it will never change, so we can put a TTL of 30 days onto it. And what you also can do with page rules, you can see here, these options. There's a long list. My screenshot only shows some options of this, but there's a long list. You can what you can do with CloudFlare itself. And what we also use it for is for warnings. Not many, but some hard forwardings like a 301, a permanent redirect. For that, we use these CloudFlares. And the cool thing about this, you can move these page rules in their direction, and always the first which hits this configuration you did in this page rule will be executed, and the rest of it is not be executed. So in my opinion, that's really easy to maintain. The problems with purging caches. When we first started with CloudFlare and the module we have created for it to purge caches was really easy, because we had products with which were related to some categories, and we just had to collect all these URLs of the categories with the products on it. This was okay for the beginning, and we purged CloudFlare caches always by the URL. That's totally okay, but not if you have to purge 1,000 of URLs, because our customer was growing fast, and products increased by a lot, and categories increased by a lot. And so that means that you have to purge a lot of URLs. And the thing is that each purge request on the CloudFlare API is limited to 30 entries. So imagine you have to purge 2,000 URLs with a package of 30 entries each API request. This can take a long time, I can assure you. Another thing about purging CloudFlare caches is that they always say that to you in the dashboard, if you are purging caches, that it can take up to, that it may take up 30 seconds to purge all caches worldwide. I have experienced that once, that it has taken longer than 2 or 3 seconds, but in my opinion, this is also okay, because when you're looking at the worldwide node network of CloudFlare, they have to purge maybe some gigabytes of your assets in all their caches, and that's okay. Of course, these 30 seconds make it difficult, make it more difficult for your cache warming processes, but you will find a solution for that as well. So here we'll explain the purge process by URL and tag. Think of a product like this cable, which is related to 3 categories. When this cable is out of stock, I have to go to CloudFlare and say, hey, please purge this URL and purge this URL and purge this URL. Of course, I can put this into a single request because it's below the 30 max entries. But imagine you have thousands of this. Yeah. So this can take a long time. Another solution is that you can put a tag on each HTML doc or each asset. Yeah, you can put tags on JavaScript files, on image files, CSS files, whatever you want. Yeah. The solution we had then was that we add a response header with the tag Kabel by our application. That means that all of these URLs, which are cache nodes, cache objects in the CloudFlare, all of these cache objects have this tag Kabel. And now, when I want to purge this product with all the related URLs, all the related categories, I just have to go to CloudFlare and say, hey, CloudFlare, please purge the tag Kabel. And this means that all of these URLs which had this tag are being purged instantly. And this, well, it saved our asses because this is really fast, and you can purge thousands of URLs of your products by only one API request. Another thing we are using with CloudFlare is the workers. Workers were, as I remember correctly, were introduced in 2018 by CloudFlare. And the workers are a serverless execution environment based on JavaScript. And this is really cool, because all you can do by JavaScript, you might do in a worker. Things you can do by the workers is change requests and responses, which is really cool. Fetch and send data from or to other origins or our web server in the background. I will show you an example. Store and use limited data in the environment variables, which is pretty awesome. And you can replace HTML without purging caches. So here's an explanation about the cache objects. As I said before, every URL with a get parameter on it, every URL is a single cache object in CloudFlare. So this is a cache object, and this is a cache object. You see the green circuits here. This represents a cache object. And if a user tries to request this URL, and let's imagine this URL is also already in the cache, and the user tries to access this URL, he will get a miss from CloudFlare because the cache object itself is not existing already. So the data has to be fetched from the origin server. But we have workers. And with the worker, we can change the request, and we cut the get parameters. So in CloudFlare, the thing which is being requested is this URL, and this URL is the same as this one. And the best place we have put this cache object to life by our cache warming. And what happens now is that a customer requests this URL, and we don't care what get parameter is on it. All get parameters which are not used by the site are being cut from the URL, and CloudFlare is only asked for this URL. And what happens is that CloudFlare will not access this cache object. So it will deliver this cache object, and this results in a hit instead of a miss. And we had this problem with a affiliate like recommendations on our website, and we had to find a solution to make these links much more faster. And then we had the idea to use a worker and just cut these segments from the URL. But you might think that any tracking or JavaScript or something else might not work then, but that's not true. For the browser itself, it doesn't change. Yeah? The request is only being cut in this environment, and we only want to get this cache object. The thing what I have mentioned before, when we have a full page cache and we need to change data, normally you have to purge the whole cache for the page. So let's imagine you have a product like a bike, and the bike is going out of stock. Normally you have to purge the whole HTML, the URL, to purge the cache of this article, of this product. And this is not the best solution because it is out of the cache, and users are coming to your website and are experiencing a slow website because maybe your cache warming was not that fast, and put it back to a working cache object. What you're doing is typically you will use Ajax just to ask for other data. Of course, the stock example is not the best for this solution, but think of a advertisement, an advertisement on the front page, and the best example is all these advertisements on pages like food recipes. Yeah, every time I read something, some recipe for a meal, I scroll down and I see I'm already reading my the text what I have to do, and then an advertisement is being loaded by JavaScript when the document is already completed, and this leads to a jumping website. And I hate jumping websites because you're still reading the text, and then the advertisement is being loaded, and then the data is put into this HTML, and the height changes, and the whole page is jumping. I hate that. Yeah. So you all know this solution that your full page cache, you don't want to purge your caches because cache warming is maybe is taking long. The process by itself is complicated or anything else. So you're using Ajax requests to get data from outside and hydrate your website, your cached website with this new data. And this is not really fast. Yeah, the result is that, as I said, you have jumping elements, which I personally hate, and you have a slow loading. And another thing is that most of the tests, like Lighthouse also, will put your score down because in fact your website is a slow loading website which is not finished. But there's a CloudFlare Worker, and it can do this for us. Just imagine you're requesting a URL, and on this request, the worker by itself in the background asks another server, like our origin or any server out there, which can answer our question, like this sentence: is Trump still president? And when you are getting this data, you can put this data into the cached object and replace HTML. So maybe you put a div with the ID replacement into your HTML file, and then you have this HTML file in the CloudFlare cache object, and the worker is able to replace this div with the ID replacement with his own code and stuff and information, like the information he requested there. And this leads to that you can deliver your HTML without purging your CloudFlare caches. In the result, you don't need an Ajax request. Your website is not jumping, and the information is already included in the delivered HTML. But it is possible to do this more faster. Not much more faster, but faster, because the request the worker has to do to the outside, and maybe the outside server is a bit slow, or the answer is not the best because the connection is bad. It will lead to a slow delivery of CloudFlare itself, because the worker first has to get this information so he can deliver the changed HTML. In this case, you can use the environment variables of the workers. So let's imagine on the 20th January, we started a process and set this variable in the worker to false, because Trump is not in the office anymore. So on the future requests on the cache objects, the worker will just look into his own scope and will see, okay, my variable says it's false. So I can replace the HTML node with this information. And in case of Trump is still in the office, this will be the result. So the result of this is that, like before, the HTML is delivered with the current information you stored in the worker itself. And that's a bit faster than the other solutions where the worker has to fetch the data from outside, because you are minimizing the request. So you are eliminating the request. You don't need that anymore, and the data is stored at your worker. So that's from me. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Sven, for your talk. We have one question in the chat in German. So if you have any more questions, please write them to the chat. The question is from Christian, and it is, wie wertet ihr aus, was die Leute anfragen, wenn ihr nur noch whitelisted Objekte ausgebt?
Geht es da um die Cache-Objekte?
Vermutlich. So, wie wertet ihr aus, was die Leute anfragen, wenn ihr nur noch whitelisted Objekte ausgebt? Das kam etwa in der Mitte vom Vortrag.
Also es bezieht sich wahrscheinlich, ich antworte mal auf Deutsch, das ist auch einfach für mich heute. Bezieht sich wahrscheinlich auf...
Also er hat gesagt ja.
Ja, es bezieht sich wahrscheinlich darauf, dass wir einfach die URL dahingehend beschneiden und bei CloudFlare einfach nur noch dieses Product.html ankommt. Wenn es da ums Tracking geht, also das Tracking an sich läuft ja normalerweise bei den meisten auf JavaScript-Basis, und im Browser bleibt alles gleich. Also im Browser bleibt hier dieser Query-String bleibt weiterhin erhalten. Und die ganzen Tracker und so weiter können das natürlich weiterhin machen. Uns geht es nur darum, dass quasi dieser Query-String hier wegkommt und CloudFlare denkt, okay, das ist genau diese eine URL und wir brauchen ja nur den Content aus diesem grünen Kreis. Und den wollen wir zurückbringen. Und das ist eigentlich alles. Und Trackings, also wie jetzt Google Analytics und so weiter, die kriegen das natürlich weiterhin mit, weil es alles clientseitig läuft. Würden wir das natürlich serverseitig auswerten wollen, dann hätten wir natürlich ein Problem, weil es kommt ja auch nicht zum Origin-Server durch. Aber in so einem Fall könnte man theoretisch auch den Worker benutzen.
Okay, danke. Also Christian hat noch geschrieben, Fragezeichen Produktfarbe gleich grau. Okay, er hat geschrieben, alles klar. We have a second question from Sam, saying he's not a front-end expert, but why not use pre-compiled asset? You get different static file name every time to avoid Purge Cache.
Das ist richtig, das machen wir auch. Deswegen ist auch das ist eine englische Frage. Answering the question for the not front-end expert and the pre-compiled assets. That's correct. We are doing this with JavaScript and CSS assets. So we just put a version number behind the asset when it is included. And because of that, we can put a very high TTL, so time to live, on these assets by the page rules. And this is also a thing Lighthouse Score and other scoring tests are mentioning, that the TTL of such assets is pretty high. But for a HTML document, we have to purge the cache because we can put a version number onto it, because HTML files like products are used in advertisements like Google AdWords or affiliate networks or so on.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. That was the last question. So now we switch over to Andreas.